And yeah.
That's us. Welcome to the minivan. Everybody, we are hanging out, rocking out in the minivan. Literally, this time, it's been a while since we've been in the minivan because of some crazy weather in Houston, lots of things. But today, we are finally back rolling in the minivan. So we're happy to have anybody here. And as we're waiting for everybody to get here, I think it would be remiss not to acknowledge all the amazing people that have been participating in a lot of our content online. Nick has made an amazing investment in making sure that we've got lots of shorts, pumping them out so that you've got content very delivered, short form to you. So Nick, how has the experience been for you in like being focused and driven to create so many shorts? What has that process been like for you as a creator? And kind of,
it's been a fun creative outlet. Just I was watching all this stuff anyways. It wasn't like I am having to go out of my way to watch a lot of the content from things like X-Men, the Fallout TV show, and then movies, whether it was, the Star Wars anniversary or we were going to the theater to see stuff. So I was already generally forming my opinions on these things. It's just kind of finding what works time-wise with the shorts, what works visually, what kind of sets us apart from everybody else making movie content. And they're just trying to have like fun with it. Sometimes it takes a little more of a comedic flair, like with the Deadpool videos, and sometimes it's a little more serious.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting to anybody at home watching this, we're not experts. We're just enthusiasts. And so we don't want to pretend to put things out into the internet or social media ether where we're saying that we know everything about this, all the Easter eggs, all of this. We're the channel that is meant to kind of supplement or add to that. So many of those channels out there that we love, New Rockstar, Screen Crush, Heavy Spoilers, all those channels do an amazing job breaking down a lot of these movies. But what I don't think they do a great job is having an outlet where people can participate and listen and kind of have their own kind of community. And I'm not just talking about like, hey, join our Patreon channel, or hey, we have a Discord too. All these other things that really don't give you anything except more opportunities to buy things from us. We want it to be fun. The reason we started Minivan Movie Club is because we started our own club a while back, driving the minivan, going to the movies, talking about movies, driving back. So our hope is that tonight what we can do is have a little bit of a conversation. Everybody, welcome to the minivan, welcome to the club, and let's get started. But as is always a tradition in the minivan live stream, just like it says my favorite line in the movie Top Gun Maverick, today celebrating the 2-year anniversary, my dad would have done it.
Yeah.
If my dad was talking about movies, he'd be sitting there with a bottle of something in his hand. So today we're going to enjoy our bottle of Blue Note Juke Joint Whiskey, a bottle of whiskey picked by our very own friend of the show, Cinebourbon. They make bourbon cinematic, and we like to enjoy the cinema with a little bit of bourbon. So what we're going to do is we're going to taste this. So, Nick, I got you a little Glencairn
thank you,
there.
sir. Thank you.
This is unopened, brand new. We're going to taste this. This bottle was actually given to me as a gift, so I've had it before. And I loved it so much, so I went back and got another one after I finished it, because it's good stuff. It's uncut, straight from the bourbon, from the bottle, 123 proof. That's pretty good. And for those of you that don't know, uncut, unfiltered, what that means is that this show is going to get really crazy really quick. No, I'm kidding. What it really means is that this is exactly as it went into the barrel. This is how it came out. There's no water added to it. There is no filtration, no charcoal activation, none of that. As it was intended to be. Probably wasn't the sexiest thing to do to lick that bottle.
Yeah. Let's not clip that. Yeah. Put it on the shorts.
Luckily, YouTube won't flag us for that. So, for those of you that are at home watching the Minivan Movie Club, I encourage you to go out there and get you a bottle of Blue Note. This is, again, the uncut, unfiltered. Make sure you get the uncut, unfiltered. Usually about like $45, $50. Not a crazy expensive bottle, but a nice bottle. So, Nick, to you, cheers.
Some movies. If you guys are sipping on anything tonight, let us know in the comments what y'all are having. Whether it's water
it's good.
Or bourbon.
It's got a little heat on the end of it.
Oh, yeah, you can feel it. I didn't have any hair on my chest before this. Oh, yeah, it's coming in. Coming in tight.
It's nice, though. I like it.
So that's something my dad and your dad have in common. If they were talking about movies, he would definitely have a glass of whiskey, glass of bourbon.
And what's ironic too, I feel like so many people of our parents' age, they grew up watching and loving movies, and now that they're older, they're like, I don't have time for movies, but they will sit around and just drink and talk.
My dad will watch old movies now. He doesn't see much new stuff. In college, he used to call me all the time, like, "How do you set up this DVD player again?"
See,
like, Dad, I told you that.
My grandfather was a huge movie buff, loved westerns. He, in his trailer, they travel all the time. It's in their motorhome. He would have a copy. He had a copy of The Time Machine, the new one that came out a few years ago.
I remember.
It seemed like a few years ago at the time. Now it's several decades ago.
Pierce.
Yes. He had the Star Wars, all 6 Star Wars movies on VHS. That's commitment right there, y'all. He's a big. I wouldn't say he was a big movie fan, but every year they would go down to Mexico during February to be like snowbirds to escape the winter, and they would go over to Mexico, come back, and they'd have all these bootlegs of like movies. So my grandfather would be like, "Hey, did you see Lone Survivor?" I'm like, "No, it's in theaters." And he's like, "I have a copy of it. You want it?" So he was a big movie fan. I guess they just run through my blood.
Oh yeah,
it's everywhere.
It's the family tradition. No, my parents, we would watch stuff together as a family, but I don't ever remember them owning a ton of stuff. And then as kids, we always had, the typical kid VHSs, the Ninja Turtles, Star Wars, that sort of thing. Now, my older brother, John, he was big on, he had a lot of DVDs that he would kind of always on repeat.
Shout out to John, friend of the show.
John, yep.
So, I guess that's a good transition here. Again, a reminder that today's glass of bourbon is brought to you by Cinebourbon. They make bourbon cinematic, and we love enjoying the cinema with a little bit of bourbon. So with that in mind, let's hop into the show. It has been a bit of time since we have been in the van with you, since we've been live with you, and we've seen a huge amount of movies for just a 30, 60-day period. Way more than the typical person has. And again, we're not experts, we're enthusiasts. We're just everyday guys that enjoy making a flick good. So we've seen the movie If, we've seen the movie Godzilla New Empire, Kung Fu Panda, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Mad Max Fury Road, Garfield. So many movies that have been really fun. If you've been paying attention on the channel, you've noticed a lot of content around Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and of Furiosa, recapping all the movies in those series.
Yep.
So we'll spend a bit of time there, but before we get into those 2 bigger movies, are there anything that stand out to you when you think about some of the movies that we've seen in the past month?
I think that there's been a big kind of push, even with just TV shows that I've watched in the last 4 months, is this dystopian era of post monkeys taking over, or whether it's oil shortages and people going crazy in the Australian desert. Fallout TV show was really successful in the last couple months. Silo. So I think maybe it's just our impending sense of doom is kind of taking over in the content that's really popular right now. The new Hunger Games was really popular. There's just something that I think resonates with humans is we only got so much time left before we start going after each other.
Any of those movies that really particularly stood out to you, hey, you should go see this movie? It's about to be. Some of those movies will probably be hitting streaming providers pretty soon. So, what are some of the movies hey, you got to go check that one out?
I really think that if you have a chance to see it, because it'll probably leave in the next week or two, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was a really fun one visually. If you get a chance to see it in Dolby, the CGI is perfect in that movie. And then Furiosa is an excellent movie, especially if you loved Fury Road. It lives up to the hype. It is not just why do we need this prequel? It actually has a lot of character development, and it's a fun movie. It's not a copy and paste of Fury Road. They build upon some things that you wouldn't even think they'd be able to. Fury Road is the peak of car chases. It's the peak of what you can do with stunts, and even Furiosa adds a little bit of elements that you're oh wow, I didn't think I would ever see this.
Yeah. No, I agree.
What about you?
We'll talk about Furiosa in a little bit. I've got a lot of thoughts there. I think one of the movies I would encourage people on streaming platforms, if you didn't get a chance to see it in theaters, once it hits Max or wherever it's going to be, go check out Godzilla and Kong New Empire. It's a fun movie. if you're someone who's like, hey, it's not my thing, Godzilla isn't my thing, but I want an entertaining, goofy movie, it was a fun movie. And I think that when you're at home and you've got your 75-inch TV, you can kind of snuggle up with a blanket and some popcorn. I think you'd be surprised at how enjoyable the movies are. They are corny. There's a little bit of campiness to it. But again, no one's expecting a realistic, 300-foot tall dinosaur to, walk through the city. So it takes a bit of disbelief. I remember my father, as we mentioned earlier, he'd rather drink scotch than he would watch a movie. But I remember watching Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers with him one time, and he was like, this is all fake, right? It's all not realistic. It's all fake. I'm like, yeah, I know that elves and
there's no orcs
and
running around.
Isn't real. And then like the trees were talking, and he's like, trees don't talk, Brett. This isn't real. And then you've got the hobbits like hanging out with him, and then the tree starts walking, and he's like, that's it, I can't watch this anymore. So he canceled his subscription to Encore that weekend because he couldn't take how unrealistic it is.
He's like, I can't have my son watching this.
So if you're one of those people, maybe don't watch Godzilla. But I did really enjoy it. Was it the best movie of the year? No, but it was fun. I thought they've really gone from trying to make this gritty, dark action film into making like a popcorn movie. It's fun. It's goofy. The colors are really playful. I think that it was a fun movie. So once it hits Max or wherever it's going to be, check it out.
I think if you have kids and you are a parent at all, I think is a movie that you could show that to your grandmother, you could show that to a little kid.
Yeah.
It's kind of a full-on family movie that I'd highly recommend. Especially, it's going to hit Paramount when it leaves theaters because that's who produced that movie. Highly recommend If.
Yes, I loved If. I know that some people will think it was a little bit cliche or silly, but it's a kids movie. It's meant to be silly. It's about imaginary friends, so if there's not some silliness there, I think that they kind of messed up the movie. They missed the point.
Yeah, they missed the mark.
So if you're looking for something that's goofy, a little bit fun, has a good like heartstring message, there's always room for the world to hear a little more positivity, and for it to be told in a unique way, I think is really important. So much has been made in the last couple of years about movies being original or just regurgitated IP. And I thought that If was a good job of telling something that's new and unique, especially as we transition into movies like Kingdom of the Apes, which has very long lineages to the 60s, all the way to Mad Max, which has lineages to the late 70s. Yep. So those are some big legendary IPs that have been around for 50 plus years, and they're doing well at the same time this movie's doing well. So I'm curious what our listeners think about that, but also kind of what you think in juxtaposition of like original versus legacy versus a good movie versus bad movie. What is that conversation that should be had now?
I think like fans, we do like the idea of bringing something back. It's why there's always a huge group whenever Star Wars came back, or there's a huge group when the new Mad Max comes out. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, because we grow up with these shows, we watch them with our parents, our grandparents, and we have a love for these franchises. I just think it's important how they're handled. If it's not viewed as just like a cash cow for a studio, but hey, we've got this director that's very passionate about it, and they've written a really good story to go along with it. Because I think you need those two things to mesh. Because if you just have a director that's a good director, and they're not a fan of the content, then they're probably going to make it in a way that's going to really alienate the original fan base.
Yep.
And if they're just a fanboy and they're not that great of a writer, then they're just going to remake it a la J.J. Abrams with The Force Awakens, where you have a lot of people with a valid complaint that this is just A New Hope all over again. Why are we redoing this? I can just put that movie in my DVD player because everybody's got the VHS, the DVD, the Blu-ray of these films. So I think it's just you have to find the right pairing, and some movies have done that well, like the new Planet of the Apes trilogy, now the fourth one has found that way. The new Godzilla movies have done that well with the MonsterVerse, but then we've got plenty of examples that are just straight up clunkers that I think have caused a lot of people to pump their brakes every time they see a reboot or a remake or a sequel 30 years later, where it's like, why can't we have a new idea? Well, if you're that person, go check out If, because it's a completely original idea that's brought to you by a whole new IP, whole new creation, whole new writing from the ground up. So support those kind of movies if that's the kind of stuff you want to see.
Well, I know that like The Fall Guy has been out, and it didn't really do as well as people anticipated it doing in theaters. It's not exactly an original movie because it's based off of an old TV show, but it's an original story, and it didn't do well. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes did all right, I think, in theaters. I don't know if it did as well as everyone thought it would do, but it's an IP that is doing really well. And I particularly love with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes the story and the way that they were able to both honor the previous legacy of stories from those original thread of movies done in the late 60s and early 70s, but then also tie in the trilogy that came recently that followed Caesar's story. So that's really cool that they're able to do that without characters because there's a 300-year time gap. So for them to have been able to build good characters and tell a meaningful story that wasn't just the same thing. There's, more than half a dozen Planet of the Apes movies out there. And for them to have told something that was unique. And again, I said this in my short, I don't think it's the most original story, but it is original to the Planet of the Apes universe. And I really liked that. I think that I've said this to you a couple of times now. I'm really interested to see where this Apes universe goes. And I thought this movie did a great job where they have a lot of options. There's a lot for them to either continue following Noah and May. They could follow other apes entirely, and this could kind of be a standalone Rogue One type story. Yep. But it was done exquisitely well. The CGI was done well. The voice acting was done well. The story was done well. It just made a lot of sense. And when a movie treats me as an audience member intelligently and allows me to not just see the same derivative stuff that like Civil War showed us, that movie was fun. I was really happy with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect example of the, like you were talking about, because you went back and rewatched those ones from the 60s and 70s of like there's notes, so your previous fan base can really kind of pull from that, because that's one that actually I think it's an excellent trilogy, but I think it's struggled a little bit with the previous fan base because the previous one is so sci-fi that I don't think enough of them have given it a chance to be like, oh no, this is, because it seems almost like there's two different camps of that one, which is hard to believe because after you rewatch it, you see, oh, there's so many threads that are here that you can pull from.
100%.
While it's not being like Aliens. I know like the Alien franchise really had this problem where with Alien Covenant was essentially just like a remake of Aliens.
Yep.
And I didn't get that the first time because I hadn't seen the movie yet. And when I watched it with John, friend of the show, he was like, this movie is terrible. He's like, it's just a remake. I was like, this movie was cool. It was fine.
Yeah.
And then I went back and rewatched Aliens. I was like, oh, this is what he meant. Like, they are literally like taking scene for scene shots. And that's just...
It's lazy.
A slap in the face.
It's lazy. It's you get excited about a movie. And I'll say this. I don't think that you need to go back and rewatch all of the Planet of the Apes movies. Don't necessarily do that. I enjoyed it, but there are some really like dull, hard parts about some of those late 70s movies, especially after the second one. There's a lot going on in those movies that the technology has improved so much, but I was so impressed with so many of the ideas that were like, that is true sci-fi. And I don't think I appreciated Planet of the Apes as a like Mount Rushmore type sci-fi franchise. And after having experienced every one of those things and just seeing the endurance of those movies over time and the way that they're really pioneering some ideas with like technology and the future, time travel, so many things they were doing like multiverses or singular timelines, which have been very trendy in the past 3 or 4 years across multiple movie franchises, TV shows, all that. Planet of the Apes was doing that very, very early on. I think it's underrated. This classic movie, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I think is still underrated. It was just really fun.
Excellent. You can't go wrong with seeing either one of those. When it comes to streaming, watch it. If you're a 4K collector, get it in 4K. You're gonna appreciate all the visuals that you'll get out of that one. In the Dolby Theater, we talked about it afterwards, but just the contrast from the opening scenes with the layers that they were able to present with the CGI was just so impressive. And we've watched a couple of movies now in the Dolby Theater, and for the most part, I think like the sound quality in those theaters is just through the roof. We just watched Furiosa in Dolby, and the sound was amazing. It almost, and I'm not a big sound guy where it's like audiophile of like I have to have the most perfect sound. A lot of times people will hate to hear this. I just have my projector and I just let the sound come out of that thing. I know that would kill a lot of people, but it's almost to me is like, oh man, I kind of need some speakers in the back, some speakers in the front, because you have that full, like you feel immersed. And we talk about, we give Civil War a little bit of a hard time, but there's certain scenes in that where there's like explosions going on around you or gunfire, and the audio mixing in that is excellent.
I'll say this about Civil War. I did not like Civil War, but technically it was a very good film. I thought the videography was really, really good. The cinematography there. Lots of beautiful still shots where they created some really beautiful images. And since they're following a group of photographers, you better have some good still images that leave, like, burn pictures into your brain. And the sound was really great. I just thought the writing was stupid.
Yeah.
The writing was lazy, wasn't thoughtful. A lot of the dialogue was stupid.
Well, you take a premise that's like so excellent of like a civil war. There's a lot of political polarization, especially in the last like 10 years.
Texas and California are
which
allies.
Is like it's a crazy pairing, but you don't ever tell us how we get there. And
explore
you don't show,
that. Tell us why. That'd be fun.
And it's a fun idea. That's really one of the things that really drew me to the film was Texas and California are allies. How do we get to that point? And to just leave.
How do they work together? Like, even leave it ambiguous and show us how it's working. It was just a weird movie. Jesse Plemons shows up and
he's excellent.
He's the best part of the movie.
He is a phenomenal actor. He's phenomenal in Black Mirror. He's phenomenal in Breaking Bad. He's phenomenal in Game Night. Any movie you see Plemons in, he's just a wild card of an actor that he has the ability to be like, oh, this guy would do whatever the crazy thing
he's a chameleon. You're like, oh yeah, he's gonna do whatever he said he's gonna do. He's gonna whatever he understands the assignment of what the job is. And I thought the movie was gonna be more of what his scene was, and it wasn't.
That is the best scene in the whole movie.
Of course.
And it is like heart pounding, terrifying because you don't know what's gonna happen with it. And if the whole movie was that scene, like if they just extrapolated it somehow, I'd be like, wow, this was a phenomenal movie, one shot. But it wasn't. That's not the movie.
It was not. Whereas Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I think, delivers a lot on the beautiful cinematography. Like there are parts of it that feel like a VR nature walk, where you're like they say. I was so amazed in the opening sequences after Caesar's funeral, where they show the apes climbing these trees, and then you kind of pan back, and I'm like, what is that? Like, oh, those are buildings.
Yeah. Like
that was so cool for me as the audience experience. And again, I'm not harping on it because it's what we do. I'm just harping on it because it has changed with I Want to View Movies. Is going to premium showings. We saw Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes with the premium screen, the premium color, the premium sound, and it just looked so much better than it would have on my TV in my media room here. And
unless you have an OLED, apparently that's the gold standard.
It doesn't beat. Being on a gigantic screen.
If you enjoy movies, support theaters in that way. I have just gotten into 4K collecting. Brett has a small collection of 4K movies. If you enjoy the medium, follow it. Give it a little support. I know times are a little hard financially, but the things that you enjoy, invest in those. And as far as like your actual ability to own anything, you only actually own it if you own the physical copy of it. Because the digital copy, at any point, they may close down the server. They may. It's basically just like a license to hold if you have a digital copy of anything. So just remember, they're just letting you borrow it if it's digital. If you have the physical one, they can't take that away from you.
Until they come to your house and rip it from your cold, dead hands.
And then we've got like a Fahrenheit 451, which we love a post-apocalyptic thing, so it's not out of the question.
No, I think that's a good question to ask about any movie. In the past, what we've done is we've ranked movies like on a scale of 1 to 10 minivans. I think moving forward, something I want to ask you is like, okay, before we move from Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes into our discussion on Furiosa, and any of the other movies we talked about, Civil War, Godzilla, Kung Fu Panda, Garfield, all those movies we've seen, are there any of these movies that you're looking to add to your collection?
So we talked about this a little bit before. Furiosa, I think, is one that I'm heavily considering. My criteria for adding is a movie that I love, that not only do I think it's a good movie, but it's a movie that connects with me somehow. Because the last thing I want is just like that wall that you see in people's houses of DVDs that they never watch. I want movies that resonate with me, that have emotional connections.
Yeah.
I talk about Fury Road as one. I watched that with a good friend of mine in the theaters for the first time. Or movies I grew up watching as a kid. But Furiosa is one that I would heavily consider. Since I have children, is something that I would consider owning. I don't know if I would get this Planet of the Apes. Maybe the last trilogy would be something that I would kind of consider. But it's not one of those that's like I love. I think those are all excellent movies. But there's not something that resonates with me with those films.
I could see if somebody was a huge sci-fi fan, I think Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is fantastic. Yeah, I really think it's very well done. And if you are into that trilogy or into all those movies and you want to own all those movies, I would highly, highly recommend it. Go get it.
Yep.
Put it in your collection. Something that I've been doing in addition to the physical media is I've really been enjoying some of like the novelty items at AMC or at Cinemark that they sell. Like here, I've got my Furiosa Mad Max Saga Cup. I got the popcorn bucket. I'm gonna make it short here soon once I get a couple of the popcorn buckets of like how fun it is to like connect my fandom with my family. So like when they have a movie night at the house, they are using these cups and buckets because they want to feel like they're at the movies as well.
Yep.
And for kids, there's not always a great kids movie. We went and saw Garfield. I thought it was just okay. I can confidently reflect that it is now like revealed on a Rotten Tomatoes like 30% from the fans.
So you're validated in your opinion.
So I'm validated that all the other fans agree. Lowest animated film in the past 5 years. So that's not good. My kids loved it though. My son said that's his favorite movie until he sees the next one.
Yeah, of course. That's how kids work.
You know,
and that's all. Honestly, that's all that matters. Like
yes.
If your kids have fun at the theater, it's okay. But we also understand it's not lost on us that like that trip is expensive.
It's also not lost on me this though. Everything you want to do with your kids outside of the house is probably expensive. I'm very well aware of every Pinterest board, going to the park and doing picnics and going on a bike ride, feeding ducks, your old dirty leftovers, all that crap. Going to the movies also doesn't have to be expensive. With my kids, we brought them water. I got a giant big thing of popcorn for the three of us to share. And then we went on Tuesday night, or we went to a matinee showing on Thursday evening.
Yep.
So the tickets were $6.99 per kid.
And you can find it. I know Movie Grill has a family pass. My wife has already signed up the kids to go see
all the summer movies.
Summer movies, because you can sign up. I know a good friend we just mentioned, Rudy earlier. His wife has signed up their kids to take them. And some of these movies we've already seen, but it's something to beat the heat. Get the kids in the theater.
They're like $3.99.
You start to build the love. So they've signed up for several movies. I know this summer has a bunch of kid movies. We were already looking at his calendar. Inside Out is one that kids are going to love to see. The new Despicable Me. It doesn't matter how good the parents think these movies are. The kids are going to love them in theaters.
And I'll say this. I did not regret taking them to see Garfield. It wasn't like bad as if like something negative was presented. It was still good morals, good values. I think Chris Pratt is really... His agent must be pushing voiceover work.
He's the Kevin Hart of acting right now.
Just
him blowing everything up.
It just wasn't good. And I've seen some other like Kung Fu Panda 4 we saw recently. I'm like, oh, that was fun. Like green light for kids, yellow light for adults. I think that if I was a parent, I would have no problem putting Garfield on while I'm washing the dishes for the kids.
Yeah, there's no questionable moral.
I'm not trying to watch it. We're like Inside Out 2. I'm excited about that one. I'm gonna be there on opening night with the kiddos. And I think it also speaks to, I have so many friends that ask me now, like, dude, you see movies all the time. Or my parents, like, you go to the movies a lot. That must be a lot of money. And then when I tell them about like the program they have at AMC that we're A-listers.
Yep.
And like
A-list status.
the value that gives me, they're like, what? My aunt Shannon, she's a huge movie lover. Shout out to Aunt Shannon. She loves movies. And when I told her like the way that AMC stub A-listers get points and credit, she's like, 3 movies a week for $18 a month?
This woman loves movies so much she made her daughter work in a movie theater.
Yes,
that's how much she loves movies.
So I mean, there's just so much value to me in these like membership programs. Even with Cinemark, Cinemark has their program where the value rolls over into tickets. So if you want to like set it and forget, it's $10 a month, and that turns into 12 tickets. Whether you use them now or later,
it's not the ultimate value, but if you're going to movies, at least sign up for something.
You can go to Cinemark and use those credits for a $14 ticket.
Yeah,
and you paid $8.99 for it.
But we know that the A-list value is the best with the Dolby. You get the premium showings with those. With Regal, you get premium showings.
I do think that there are people that would look at what we spend as, I'm $18 a month for a year. I don't go to the movies that much, and because there's no like residual value. Like at least at Cinemark, I have a credit for a ticket. Like I have a voucher that I can exchange to get a real ticket. Side note. I had to tell my aunt that she has a Cinemark program. She was using her credits for like the kids on like Tuesdays for $5 days, and I was like, no, you're losing money. You're trading your $10 bill for a $5 bill. Oh, man. So wait, next time pay for those in cash. I know it feels like, hey, I've got these credits, but you paid for those.
Yep.
Use those for other
Save
showings.
Those for the big
so
ones.
Like me, I have kids, so I have not canceled my Cinemark membership just because I know they don't care if they see it in IMAX or whatever. I've got 4 kids, so. Our family, that's 6 tickets if our whole family goes to see a movie, and it's not fun to pick who gets to go, who doesn't get to go. One of the reasons I got to go see Garfield last week is because my wife and 2 other turn it off. No, my wife and 2 of my kids were out of town, so my 2 bigger kids were like, "Hey, we want to go see Garfield." I was like, "All right, let's go." And it's so fun to be able to just go to the movies and it not be a financial stress.
Oh yes.
Like me having that. It is so not like for us as buddies to be able to like just go to the movies whenever is awesome.
Because we have amazing wives.
Yes, mostly because we have amazing wives, but also because we have an amazing partnership, not officially, with AMC, and their club has made it easy for our club to see so many awesome movies. And I swear, man, seeing them on Ultimate Sound, Ultimate Theater with IMAX, bigger screens, it's awesome. We went to a new theater this past week in the north part of our area we hadn't been to before, and it was nice.
It was so nice.
It was nice.
It had like the Amazon style. You walk in, you grab the popcorn, and you get your own drink. It was, nobody checked your ticket. They were like, we know that people are here. They paid for these tickets. They're not just sneaking in here.
Man, in the Woodlands, it's nice, man.
Hell yeah. It's a nice area.
The sun shines brighter. The air was cleaner.
You know, the area we're in, we usually go to the theater.
Here in Guns Point, it's difficult.
They're like making us take our IDs out. There's police out there making sure you're not doing anything nefarious. You know, there's sketchy people trying to sell you watches inside the bathroom. Just all sorts of just stuff going on. But it's a fun experience. That's what I told the wife. I was like, we were able to walk to the movie theater and back to the car, and we didn't feel like we were going to get shot one time. So it was a nice experience. They had a Dave & Buster's across the street. I was like, man, I wish Cypress had a set.
Oh my gosh, that'd be so fun.
If we had a Dave & Buster's right there, some cool restaurants, a movie theater, I would just never leave. I would just move my house right there.
Yeah, I'd live there across the street. Just walk.
Just move in. Just like perfect, a little apartment complex right there. If they had a H-E-B right next door, I'd be set for life.
Not far. Well, okay, so let's pivot a little bit into the movie that I want to talk about, which is Furiosa, Mad Max Saga.
Furiosa.
What did you think? We just went to the new theater.
Yep.
We sat in the nice chairs. We watched the nice movie. What did you think of Chris Hemsworth, Anya Joy-Taylor, and George Miller's new Furiosa?
I thought you were revealing something here for the first time with Joy. No, I love the movie. I think that so often I can give 2.5, 3 hour movies a hard time as far as rewatchability. That's a big criteria for us when we rank movies. And if your movie's 2.5 hours long, the chances that I'm going to put it on yearly greatly diminish, even if I like the movie, just because once you have a family, once you have kids, that time that you have to watch those movies becomes more and more precious, especially as new things get released all the time. This is one that I could easily see myself returning to. You talk about movies with strong female leads, strong characters that you can still resonate with, but it's not forced down your throat. Furiosa's up there with like the Sarah Connors, the Ripleys, these characters that are strong, but they're not strong just because they're women. They're strong because they're strong characters. They go through trials. We get to see them fail, and we get to see them succeed.
Yeah.
And so it feels that much more realistic, that much more invested in their success. I don't know that it necessarily had to be 2.5 hours long, but it's not one that made me complain about it. Where I think like a movie that we still enjoyed, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, probably could have shaved 20 or 30 minutes off of that one. This one, I didn't mind. I was sucked in. I wanted to see what we were going to see next episodically as that story went on. What about you?
I really, really liked Furiosa. I think that it's not often that a prequel not only stands on its own and provides a great movie, but also that the prequel, which again is a movie that in the linear storyline comes before, but is made after that movie. It's not very often that a prequel makes that movie that came out even better. And I think this movie did that. It doesn't happen very often, and this movie accomplished it in a very powerful way, where if Furiosa is kind of this more detailed story that is more nuanced and a lot of world building, a lot of explanation, a lot of exposition, well, then Fury Road is the movie that comes back after it that doesn't need to be explained. Fury Road is lauded by many as like the greatest action film of all time, like the greatest car chase of all time, because it's just one long chase for 158 minutes. It's awesome. This movie was not the same movie. It was made by the same director, and you can see some heavily inspired pieces and sequences that are, that's George Miller, that's Mad Max, that's my style. But I also thought that this movie did a much better job than any other Mad Max movie at actually having a more in-tune story. And that makes sense a lot because Furiosa is not Mad Max. So it should feel different. I've seen a lot of criticism on X and Twitter that this was nothing like Fury Road. I didn't like it because it wasn't Fury Road. It's not Fury Road 2. It's not the prequel to Fury Road. It's Furiosa's origin story, which happens to come before Fury Road. And I just thought that it was really, really fun. And I thought that George Miller did a lot of dichotomous things there that show how gifted of a filmmaker he is.
He's just a brilliant mind, I think. It's not even just like, oh, he's got some talents for things. Like the way that he thinks about and structures things for actors can be frustrating, but the way that it pans out, because the way that he organizes his stories is phenomenal. The way that he frames his movies is phenomenal, and the way that he has them edited is phenomenal.
Well, and to give a credit, like point out what we're saying when we say George Miller's really good at this is, we just watched these older movies.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, there are parts of them that are a little daft, a little slow, and kind of sucky. But one thing that George Miller has never been poor at, and has always excelled and only gotten better at it, is telling a story without dialogue. Getting your attention as the viewer to what you need to see so that you know what's going on. And in this story, he used dialogue so that, like, it's not a movie full of words. Like, people have commented on Oppenheimer last year. It's a really dialogue-heavy movie. So there's so much being spoken. There's so many words that are being thrown at us. Even in Furiosa, which isn't, a dialogue-heavy movie, there's still words. And every time something gets thrown out, it's important. So, like, I'm speaking of the line that they talk about where Dementis, they mention, he's struggling with consolidating power and, dealing with all the little vagrant enforcers that he has. And that helped me understand so much about who he was, what he was dealing with, and it also made me understand who Immortan Joe was. It made me understand what the whole power dynamic and the power echo of the system was there for Fury Road, and Fury Road depends on that power because it demonstrates again like how successful Immortan Joe is. He's not just another clumsy big bad that will fail by the end of the movie. He is a man that has conquered this wasteland for a long time because when all these other crazies are out here, Immortan Joe was the craziest of them all. He was the one that was stronger than all of them. He was the one that was able to do all that. And it perfectly illustrates this like power structure versus anarchy, which has always been this theme in Mad Max of like anarchy, anarchy, anarchy. And in Fury Road, you think, oh, Immortan Joe, he's just another anarchist. But by the end of the movie, you're like, oh wow, he's like built this weird system of like a cult from like Norse mythology and water and this and that, and oh, he's like a systematic bad dude. He's not some anarchist. He has an evil power structure, and this movie highlighted that perfectly.
Well, I think, on the way home from the movie, you talked about Immortan Joe and Fury Road and the way that they showcase him of like, you see all the scars and like how disgusting he is, and then you see the armor and things they put on him, and then they show him. And what you said really resonated with me was that like everything you needed to know about that character, George Miller visually gave you in like 15 seconds. And so you didn't need like this dialogue heavy over explanation. This movie shifts it a little bit where there's much more dialogue, much more story, and it's still done excellently with a lot of visuals that tell you even more than just what you're hearing on the screen. Anya Joy-Taylor, if you were worried about her ability to be Furiosa, if you were worried about Hemsworth's ability to be a different character than Himbo Thor, or I'm learning who I am Thor, he played all of his strengths excellently.
Yes.
He is charismatic, but he also isn't trying to be like the villain that you're like, oh, I don't really know if he's good or bad.
Yep. I want to give a shout out to some of the cast of Furiosa. So obviously I thought Chris Hemsworth did an amazing job. He was seriously outstanding. But I also like to give some love to Aliyah Brown. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Aliyah Brown. But she plays young Furiosa. Yep. And this also gives credit to George Miller because in a movie with Anya Joy-Taylor, who is obviously a golden girl right now in Hollywood, big name, big money, it's a headliner. And so this movie, you think, oh, they've got the kids scene, and it's the flashback, and they'll jump real quick. 5 minutes go by. 10 minutes go by. 20 minutes, 30, 40 minutes go by, and we still haven't seen Anya Joy-Taylor. And I thought to myself, wow, that little girl did an amazing job of, through most of the movie, just showing her eyes and telling us who she was. That was so well done, so brilliantly executed. So I was really happy with that. But it also just speaks to George Miller's ability to tell the story, and the actors serve the story. It's not the casting that's dictating what they're going to do and how they're going to do things. So I thought that was true. So that was really good. Shout out to Cinnabourbon joining us here.
Cinnabourbon.
We gave a shout out to everyone there.
Cheers, sir.
Had a little blue joint sponsored by Cinnabourbon. Uncut, unfiltered blue note. A little juke joint whiskey we're having. Just because it's the best stuff there, It's really good stuff. We're enjoying it. Show's unfiltered, just like the whiskey. And
and the thing is we talked about our dads at the beginning of this. My dad's coming into town this weekend. I'm gonna steal this bottle when Brett's not looking and let my dad have a little sample of that. That's how much we love our parents. I will steal from my partner in crime here. That's love.
Yeah, it's a very good bottle, and it was a very good movie. I highly recommend getting this bottle. Mike Yates, my friend, gave me this bottle originally. I liked it so much, I finished it off. Had to go back and get another one. So went out to M&R Liquors here in our area. Saw our friend Kaiser. Kaiser hooked me up with a good price on the Blue Note Juke Joint. Just a really good bottle. There's so much stuff out there that's allocated that's difficult to find. This is easy to get, and I enjoy it. I recommend it to other people. Has a little bit of little heat on the back end of it, but I like that. And that's kind of the way Mad Max was.
Yep,
it's
bit
hot
of heat on the back end.
There's a lot going on, and like Chris Hemsworth as Dementus was really great, and I loved the way that it ended. Again, I know people didn't like, oh, there's a monologue at the end of this movie.
I thought it was perfect.
I thought that it was wonderful, and again, speaks to Furiosa is not Max Rakatansky. They're not the same person. They're different people, and I think it's really fitting. I didn't even think about this when we originally finished the movie, but you have a scene there where Dementus says to her, like, look, you're just like me. You had everything taken from you, just like I did. Everyone died, and now you're going to kill me. Why do you want to kill me? And she goes, I want them back. And he says, well, killing me isn't going to bring them back. And that sounds like just the typical, like, plea of, don't kill me, because that's not going to do, oh, please don't, oh my God. And so his fate in the movie is actually so fitting because, one, he talks her out of killing him.
Yep.
And in doing so, he says, like, you're not doing this won't get you the revenge that you want. And what does she want? She wants to go home. And instead, she creates a new home through his body. And I thought that was so cool. I did not put two and two together immediately. Obviously, I knew she planted the seed and the tree came out of him. But what a grueling, grisly tale of revenge.
Well, you said something to me on the way home that was really profound to me. And I don't even know if you realized it, but it was like, this story is a prequel
Everything
story.
I say is profound, so thank you.
That is true. But this story is a prequel story where we already know where the character ends up, and we know the general story beats before we go in of what's probably going to happen, and still Furiosa is able to surprise you. Still, with the...
One of the most iconic things about Furiosa in Fury Road is that she has one arm.
Yeah, we know that she's going to lose it
So we know
somehow.
she's going to lose an arm at some point.
And still it has story beats that will surprise you if you haven't seen it yet.
Oh, man, it was surprising, and it was grisly, and it was brutal. I have said this, and this is where I'm saying uncut, unfiltered. Earlier today, me and Nick were texting back and forth with a group of our friends, where we were texting about a church in our area that is having a gay pride drag queen show. And that stuff doesn't fly with me. I just think it's stupid. It's dishonor to God. It's disobedient. No place for that.
It's an oxymoron.
I'm not like anti-woke, but I do believe that you should honor things that are important. There have been a lot of things in the past like 5 years in Hollywood where movies have tried so hard to push this like female agenda or colorblind cast. Let's get all these different people in this role to just make it. Let's get a black Superman. Why should we tell a black Superman movie? Just because we can, instead of actually telling just a unique story. Why is a female in this role? Why have we gender swapped this role? Because we can. There's no like actual choice for it. I want to give George Miller some flowers because Fury Road and Furiosa were movies with female characters who were strong and powerful, not because they could play basketball with the guys and they could play better than the guys, but because they used their feminine characteristics, their feminine abilities as strengths. When the wife in Furiosa exposes her pregnant belly to the Immortan Joe as a shield, I know you and I joked like, so pregnant women should use their bellies as shields. No, but when she does that, that is such an act of like boldness. And I, as a man, I will never be that strong. Because I cannot have a baby in this belly.
Immortan Joe would have shot Brett in the face.
100%. Immortan Joe would have warboyed me and sent me to Valhalla on my own dang time. But she did that, and that was so powerful because she's a woman. Hear me roar! Like she didn't out strengthen him and beat him in an arm wrestle or punch him in the face and punch right through him. She did.
When you talk about like movies that are like unintentionally pro-choice or
God,
pro-life, like they know they're having Immortan Joe's like war babies, but they still they're run away. They didn't abort them; they kept them alive.
And it's important to have movies like that, and I think it's important to talk about those things.
And you have daughters like no guy hates strong female characters. We just want them to be well written, just like anybody else. Just like you talk about Black Superman. We are two guys that love Black Spider-Man. We love Miles Morales' Spider-Man.
Oh my gosh,
We think Miles Morales
is probably best Spider-Man.
He is Spider-Man. Like, Peter Parker's Spider-Man, so is Miles Morales. I know it's confusing when they're on the screen together and Peter Parker gets it due to seniority, but, like, Miles Morales is Spider-Man. If you watch Into the Spider-Verse, if you watch Across the Spider-Verse, we love those movies. We think that he's that. It has nothing to do with your fights have nothing to do with gender, with race. If you make a good story, people will resonate with the good story.
The story trumps all of it.
Yep.
And that's why Furiosa was so well. Even the way that it was chaptered, like it
Yep.
felt right. They
Like you
jumped
said,
time.
it's like an Odyssey tale
Yes.
of like you have these chapters, and even like Anya Joy Taylor, you talked about this. She's a big name.
Very big.
She doesn't show up until way later than you would think she does. And the young actor that you gave a shout out at the beginning, they do such a seamless job. I know that George Miller used some like CGI to kind of like transpose Anya Joy Taylor's face onto hers through some transitioning stuff. But you don't even really know when Anya Joy Taylor takes over.
And I was one of the men that before this movie, I was worried. I think I told you in the car on the way to the theater. I'm a little bit worried about Anya Joy Taylor in this movie. You know, Princess Peach, the girl from the menu, the Queen's Gambit, like all these things that she's in.
Yeah.
Is she gonna be able to fill the shoes? Because Charlize Theron, she killed that role before. She did a great job in that role. So I was really worried that in this new movie, Anya Joy Taylor wouldn't be able to fill the shoes. She'd do too much or too little, and it would just feel like this campy version. And I'm here to tell you that it surpassed. It did better than I thought it was going to be. I will say I don't think she's Charlize Theron. Charlize Theron has this like
she killed it.
brute quality to her. Like, but again, that is Furiosa many years down the road after witnessing even more travesties in her life and other people around her. So she's been beaten down by the world. So it makes sense that she might be a bit more brutal. This take was good. I thought this was a very good action movie, and like you said, up there with like Ripley, Sandra O'Connor, like all those characters that you think of when you think of female leads that are just badass women. Furiosa's up there now.
Yep.
And I give that credit to Charlize Theron. I give it to Anya Joy Taylor. I definitely give that credit to George Miller, because George Miller wrote a story that people are like, Mad Max wasn't in this movie. It's lame. Mad Max is very rarely the lead character in any of his movies. He always shows up and is, helping to be some liberating factor in somebody else's problem. So it was really cool to see herself in that. Side note, I heard someone say, like, it's kind of stupid that she, at the very beginning of the movie, if she wouldn't have tried to grab that peach and just gone back, that, she would have been fine. She'd never had any of those problems. But here's the reality. At the very opening sequence of the movie, if she doesn't reach for that peach and then notice the bikers from Dementis' gang, she never goes down there. She never gets caught. Her mother never comes to get them, and they don't kill all those people. If that doesn't happen, what happens is those guys drive home, and the next day the whole gang is back, and the town gets pillaged and destroyed by Dementis and his gang.
Yep.
So she was trying to be curious, but her curiosity, while it caused her tremendous loss and suffering, it also benefited her community tremendously to be saved until the blight or flood or whatever the waters happen.
Those
with
crow
the
people. Those people
So,
creep me out.
I think that's cool. It's another little subtle nod of the story that George Miller crafted, that sometimes it takes dangerous curiosity to protect the ones that we love most, even if it comes at tremendous cost of our own selves.
And she almost has like a Daniel story of like she's thrust into this whole different world, whole different environment. It's just excellent.
And I didn't even realize this until afterwards. I was very mindful of it when I was watching it happening, but then the connection of the symbolism of like Dementis' cape. When we first see him, it's all white. It's angelic almost, with the way it crests around his face and his head. And then he gets, into a fight, so it gets a little dirty on his shoulders, and he goes into the red smoke, and he's almost baptized. And it's in his beard, it's in his hair, it's on his cape. Then, like, by the end of the movie, it's black with red at the tail. Like, it is watching him go deeper and deeper away from who he was to this new, just wasteland thing. It is fun to see him descend into madness, which is typically something that we say of Mad Max. I'm going more and more mad. So it's kind of fun to see in this movie, kind of an anti-Max. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this guy had the same thing happen to him as Max, and instead of choosing to help other people, and he could have helped Furiosa. He could have helped other people in his group. Instead, he chose to be brutal. He gave into the wasteland, and his humanity eroded and changed just as his cape did. And I thought that was a really cool piece of visual symbolism that, again, George Miller didn't have anybody say that. It was just a prop, a costume choice that says all that for you.
And we've talked about sequels here. The thing that these sequels will always struggle with is like having interesting villains.
Mm-hmm.
And George Miller, while he's had some good ones like Immortan Joe, he's had some that like visually were interesting, but they don't do a whole lot. I know people love Toe Cutter, but for me, he was just like a crazy guy. Or you have Humongous, who's like on the mic a little bit, but the way that he goes out isn't great. With Chris Hemsworth's Dementus, he has funny lines, he has character growth, and he still sets himself apart from the other
Yeah.
four villains that are like the big bads of these movies. And so his ability to continue to write interesting your hero is only as good as the villains that he faces. Just like they say in boxing, you're only as good as your opponents at that time. And as you become, as you live longer, you start out a hero, but you live long enough to see yourself become a villain.
Yep.
So
A lot of good characters here that we get to revisit, but also new characters. But everyone feels important. And George Miller has that way of doing that where you don't know if this guy's going to be the big, most important person in the movie, or are they going to be a linchpin for the plot, or are they some background folly extra that's meant to be like a joke or funny. Like, is this war boy going to be the new Nux? Is this person going to be this person? We don't know because you're hinged on every single word. And I think that's a masterful piece of storytelling. Like Praetorian Jack is introduced, and when we see him, we get one line about him, and I know everything I need to know about him.
Yep.
Boom. That's it. And most movies I'd be like, really? You just explained it away with one piece of dialogue? But somehow George Miller's able to get away with it. He does it masterfully, and I loved it. So I guess my last question for you, you mentioned physical media. Is this a movie that you're going to be looking to add to your collection?
I think so. I think it is. I know box office wise, Memorial Weekend wise, is the worst box office in Memorial Weekend in the last 30 years, which isn't, great for, especially a movie that I don't think deserves to be this far back as far as box office numbers. So I really want to support this one because I really would love to see at least Mad Max Wasteland. I know George Miller's getting up in age. He's in his 70s. This may be his last hoorah before. So I really hope this isn't his last movie. It's a
I
great
am
one,
really
but
hoping that they get the movie made, Wasteland, because it would be a shame.
It's like I told you, if they make Wasteland, I think really truthfully that's a perfect trilogy of Furiosa Wasteland. I haven't seen Wasteland, but if he's able to do what he did with the last two, Furiosa Wasteland and Fury Road would be a perfect trilogy, I think, for any watching experience.
Yeah, it would be really special. My take is this: I know that the box office numbers haven't been good, but this is also a #1 movie.
Yep.
It's the #1 movie over the holiday weekend. It's the first time that the #1 movie has been a rated R movie on Memorial Day weekend in a very, very long time. So I'm going to choose to look at the positives, and I'm going to encourage people to go out there and watch the movie. It's a really, really good one. Male, female, go enjoy the movies. Get out to the movies and enjoy them just the way that we have. Any other thoughts before we wrap up the show?
No, I think before we get to the end, I do want to say March, we had a March Madness bracket challenge that we did. You guys voted. The clear and decisive winner was
Undisputed
my
world
favorite
champion.
pick, and that is Remember the Titans. Of course, that is the best sports movie
Best
of all
sports
time.
movie of all time.
It was never really
Blitz all night.
a challenge. It was kind of like the Warriors in their prime, the Bulls in their prime.
The Rockets in 1994-95.
We knew
unstoppable.
that nobody was going to beat
The Dream.
Remember the Titans. We had a wild card in there with Warrior. Everybody loves that movie that's watched it. But you cannot outdo Denzel coaching a community
Classic,
into
yeah.
interrace relations the way that they did in Remember the Titans.
Community sometimes is bigger than family.
It pretty much eliminated racism, which is crazy for a movie to
That's
do, but
wild,
it did it,
too.
and we loved it.
It's over now,
Yeah.
which is great. If it's
It's
not
over.
over where you're at, you probably haven't watched Remember the Titans.
Yeah.
So it's probably your.
If you know a racist,
your
show them
biggest
that
problem.
movie, and it will fix it.
So watch Remember the Titans. Watch Furiosa, Mad Max Saga, a movie that you should go check out now. But hey, I guess we'll end it with this. This is not going to be our last live stream, so
Nope.
feel free to comment here below if you've got any ideas, comments, words of feedback, criticism. You want to troll us? Bring it. We love a good troll. You all don't know. I actually was born under a bridge. I am a troll.
I would prefer, though, if you are going to disagree with us, at least give us like your opinion on things. Not just
Go
like
for it.
not just
I
a
don't
general
care. Just
troll
go
of
for it.
like you guys are stupid. At least tell me why I'm stupid so I can kind of correct it.
I know I'm
Please.
stupid, so I don't need them to tell me why.
I mean,
But-
I would prefer like a little bit of constructive
The
criticism.
point is, this is meant to be a community. It's not
Yep.
meant to be just us like, hey, we talk at you, you talk at us.
The
It's
hope
not
is that as you
transactional.
guys interact, we will be able to bring you guys into the van and have conversations with you live in person.
Yep, that's the plan. So I guess that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Minivan Live, us hanging out in the minivan with you. As always, please be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. Make sure that you're up to date with all of our shorts, all of our updates, so that we can be in communication with you.
We have a
And-
big independent story dropping soon that we want you guys to check out.
Yeah,
So
we're pretty excited about some announcements that are coming up. I guess we should just jump right into this.
Yeah.
That this past year, we've really been thinking about what are the stories that are worth telling.
yes,
What makes a movie good versus bad? Is it rewatchability? Is it this? Is it that? What are the characteristics that make a story worth telling? And it always comes back to the story. So something that Nick and I have been working on recently, and we're really excited about it, is our own story.
Yep.
And it's not the Minivan Movie Club story. It's something totally original, based on our lives, true stories of us growing up that we have crafted into our own narrative that we're going to be releasing here on the channel.
Yep.
And we're pretty excited about that.
As we build subscribers, as we build people to interact with, we hope that gives us an avenue to share an excellent story, but a story that's engaging,
Yeah.
that pulls you in, that tells its epilogue, its prologue, its prelogue, its during log, in a way that you guys enjoy, and y'all can give us interactions, feedback,
Yep.
and something that we can rope into different stories that we see in movies and different media, and get some more interaction with you guys. That's what we're really driving and thriving
Yeah.
for is interaction.
And we're also trying to be different, and not just different for different sake, like a hipster. We watch YouTube and peruse around social media, and there's so many talking heads.
Yep.
We don't want to be another set of talking heads, another set of white dudes with a podcast. We want to add something creative back into the ether of the world, and we feel that this story is worth telling.
Yep.
We're excited to tell it, and we're really excited for you to hear it. So we hope that you can buckle up and get ready, because the van is moving, we're riding, and we're excited for you to hear that story. So that's going to wrap up for the show today.
Yep.
I'll leave you with this. In a world full of Immortan Joes, be a Praetorian Jack or a Furiosa and plant a peach seed in someone's balls.
Peace.
If it's going to end.